I have a bit of housekeeping to do. So the first thing is toilets. There are toilets just out the door that you came in, and if you just go to your right there, you'll see toilets. There's one toilet there, and there are other toilets downstairs should you need. And there's no fire drill tonight, so if we hear a fire alarm, it's for real, and you'll see the lighted fire escape routes. Just follow that either down the stairs, or if that is not possible, there is actually some back stairs here where you could go down and come out here, and we will meet at the fire points which are marked. So that's a bit of housekeeping done. Thank you very much for being here tonight. And we will start with public participation. And the first person that I have on my list is Heather Hall. And I just say, Heather, I've been given these 3 minutes timers, and I have been instructed that we have to keep to 3 minutes each so that everybody has an opportunity to speak. So if you see me turn this over, I shall say the sound is nearly run out or something like that before it's too late. The sound of time is running out. Thank you very much, Heather. Yes, please come to the table. Yeah.
Microphone. John, maybe she needs a microphone.
Microphone? You said you could, we would hear you anyway, Heather.
That's good. Good evening, councillors, your worship, members of the public, etc., everybody on Zoom. Yes, so it's great to be here actually in person, so I really appreciate that I'm able to actually speak in person, first time for a long time. Anyway, I just wanted to say a few words about the Cricket Club. First off to say that we're having a very good season. We've got 2 out of our 3 teams are actually, in the youth teams, are top of their league, and 2 out of the 3 teams have got into the semi-finals of their cup, so they're all doing really well, the youngsters. We just started a little under-8s group and another group called Dynamo, so there's lots of stuff going on with the youngsters, and it's carrying on through the summer. The adults are doing brilliantly as well. They are also top of their table and likely to be promoted. So, and they've done loads of work down there. I'm sure you've seen. They have been fantastic, the guys. So really, really exciting. As Leica said, it's a bit of a renaissance, and I'm really excited about it. So that's really good news. I really just wanted to say a few words about the future, because obviously I'm thinking about what's going to happen next, which brings me on to the Towns deal. Councillor Henson very kindly set up a meeting between ourselves and Fusion, Rob Taylor, which is very useful to actually communicate for once, because we hadn't heard anything at all. I was getting very perturbed. Anyway, we've now got fantastic news that there will be investment down at Tor, which is massively needed. However, I'm very conscious that timing is very tight. There's an awful lot to do. I have a lot of questions. I asked a lot of questions at that meeting, and I still am concerned about how much there is to do. I know Tina McEwen is working hard to get things moving with the admin side of things and the regulatory side, but I really would insist on getting going on the detail as soon as we can, because we could probably source some ECB funding. I'm pretty certain we will be able to, but we have to be in early. Once plans are set in stone too much, the ECB will say, well, I'm sorry, that doesn't conform to various FAR requirements. It's really, really important to get them engaged early. So I'm getting slightly worried that what have we got, less than a year possibly, and it just we need to get on with it. And I haven't had any direct contact since our meeting, Steve, so I'm slightly worried, which is why I sent an email to Tina to say I'm concerned, and please, no offence to the football club or to Fusion, but my contact with ECB is strong, and I would like to engage with him as soon as possible in a very active way. So that is what I wanted to say today about please include us. So.
But you saw Tina's reply.
I did, yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
It's not
yeah, I think it's just, I know how long these things, it's a big project down there. There's an awful lot to take into account, a lot of multi-sports down there. We all need to agree a way forward and compromise ultimately.
Sure.
I see from the timer that the sands of time are running away.
Okay. I think I've said everything I wanted to anyway.
Thank you. Normally councillors don't speak to this part of the meeting, but I see Councillor Smythe is...
I'd just like to ask, would it be possible for the ECB to be invited in the talks with the town deal people, since it seems to be key to this project?
Well, just quite quickly, your question.
Yes.
I think that, as a lot of people around this table will know, the town deals fund is needing a lot of work done in the next year. And Tina McEwen, who is a sort of linchpin of all the clusters, has been in touch with the sports cluster around with Heather, and she's doing a lot of background work before things actually get moving. And we're kind of told, don't employ any architects, don't employ any builders, don't start drawing any plans until we've got the work. So, I know that Heather's jumping out of the bed, and I think we're all keen to get going, but I don't think there's any point in getting the ECB involved now with the town's deal fund or board until we're told it's time to do it.
All I would say is the ECB won't charge us anything to be involved.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Well, I know that Councillor Tucker is going to speak to the town deal later, so if you'd like to hold on to that, you'll be welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you. So next on my list is Claire Rosalie Burke, who wishes to talk about travellers' land rights. Claire, the same thing, it's a 3-minute slot.
Your Worship, is it possible the speaker could hold the microphone? And it's very difficult for me to hear.
Yes, yes.
If you could get hold of the microphone.
There's a hell of a lot to cover, so what I've written down, I've written a whole load of stuff that I'd actually like information from on the Freedom for Information Act, and I have a right to see that information, so I've written that down and I will be forwarding that to the town clerk.
Yeah.
I have been on to a lot of organisations, Travellers and Gypsies organisations, to see where we stand when it comes to the law. I also would like to thank this gentleman and his wife very, very much. They have been down to the Travellers site on various occasions, communicating with us, trying to help, trying to put things in place and everything else. We have a lot of worries, we have a lot of concerns. I know that there's a lot of land that is being proposed, but again, I also know that every time that land is proposed at the last minute, things are pulled out because they know that it's going to be proposed to be a travellers' site. We have a lot of opposition, we have a lot of people not really liking us for whatever reason. I've even come up against that myself, and it ain't pretty. We are what we are, we can't change that. But besides the point, I now know that in the House of Parliament, we need 200,000 votes on that petition to get the new bill that they want to put in and propose turned around. We have 600,000 votes and it is increasing. We have businesses, we have people right across the nation wanting to turn this around for us. This is part of England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, this is our history. I've told you that before. You all have seen these pieces of paperwork that's gone out. These people are brilliant and they're fighting in the House of Parliament. There's one article that I'd like to bring forward. If all its travellers, gypsies, and I will say van dwellers, spoke up for our rights, our voice would be hard to ignore. That's one article that was put in by them. This is the history. This goes back to the war. What did my grandfather fight for? He was Romany. He came from Somerset. That's the history on it. I'll leave that with you. And that is the Friends, Travellers and Organisations. They are the main ones that are going to the government. I also would like to say, I know you're up against Somerset County Council and Mendip District Council. I would like to know what those proposals are, what the money is, where it's going, what's being put in place, what laws and regulations we now have to live and abide by. I would like to know what those are so we can have a right to say, actually, we're opposing that because this is against what we believe in. So if we can all work together as a whole, if we can stay on the lands and stay on sacred sites, Because we're being threatened at the moment. I know there's £555,000 put forward by Somerset County Council to turn a beautiful piece of meadowland that is full of wildflowers every year with conservation and buzzards and various things that are on the endangered list. I will put that forward because I've been through the RSPCA, I've been through various conservation groups on this as well. So we are protecting the land to make sure that it's there. We're also trying to get help with this gentleman through the rubbish and recycling things. We are doing our best. We're taking it down in our own trucks with our own money every week to the dump to get rid of what we have. We've already asked for the recycling plant to have recycling bins. We've been refused more than once. Loads of times actually, and we're trying to help as best we can. So if we can all work together, and we can stay where we are, because the land that you're proposing is not going to fulfil at the back of the rugby club or the football pitch, wherever it is, the amount of people that we've got on site at the moment. It's not enough. We're a community, we're a family, we stick together, we look after each other, and we help each other when we're in bad times, including mental health.
Thank you,
we don't
Claire.
stick together, we ain't got that.
I'm afraid that time has run out,
Okay.
but I understand your passion around the issue, and thank you for talking to us about it.
I will leave that with you. I need that forwarded to the town clerk. I would like the information brought forward under the previous speaker.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to Matthew Dodge, Litter ASB Caravans. Thank you. We now move on to Angela Friend, Town Tidy Up.
Good evening, everyone. Last week, you advertised in the local paper asking for volunteers. The town itself looks super. The flowers are wonderful, as usual. Move beyond the high street, and it's the pits. I can walk on my walk to town. I can name the houses that have recently changed hands in the last 3-4 months. These people have come from towns and cities, and everywhere the gardens are now overgrown. One house in particular, the post can't get in. There's brambles growing all over the pavement. People just don't seem to have any pride anymore in what they're doing. As I say, beyond the high street, the town's the pits. You cannot get away from the fact that it's just pure rubbish. No one is cutting hedges. There's one house in particular, the hedge is 4 feet away from the fence post. The fence post and the hedge is right out there. Everywhere is just awful. And I know that it's been a brilliant growing year this year, not getting away from that, because our garden's been the same. But our garden at the moment looks absolutely super. My 81-year-old husband works very hard at it. But no, it's just, I wish that people would understand that these things need cutting back. People need to be able to walk on pavements. This house in particular, it was a lady there on her own, and she always kept a wonderful garden. And obviously she's downsized, and the person in there now, well, I just don't know how anyone's going to get in there anymore. So it's just, that was my bit for tonight. And I'm glad to see so many councillors after the hassles that we have in Manor House Road at the moment, with 3 fire engines, 6 police cars, 1 ambulance taking an hour and a half to get there, firemen with all their cutting gear, aiming to cut a young lady out of her car. It's absolute chaos up there. Made even worse because of Benedict Street being closed. The traffic's been much worse. Right. But no, a young man pulled out on the right-hand side and he smacked straight into a car driving right outside our gate. He has been arrested, but plain clothes, unmarked police cars, marked police cars, everything there. But my main reason was get these hedges and try and get something in the paper or online, because I read the paper, I don't do anything else, asking people to take notice of their outside space, because it's just dreadful. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much.
I would just say that if you spot anything where it is overgrowing, as has happened before, I know, if you let Gerard know, we can possibly get someone down to make sure that the pavements are free of growth.
But it is at the moment on one of the widest pavements in Glastonbury, being Archer's Way, your corner house. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Thank you. I know Councillor Coles wishes to speak.
Yes, I've received some information today about Rowley Road, Leg and Mutton Road. Young mothers are forced to push their pushchairs in the road, and there is a lady in a wheelchair trying to cut the hedges back. That shouldn't be. Top of end of Bugtown, just outside as you come to the shop on Windmill Hill, there's a lot of grass growing there and weeds. Where I live, I clear up the weeds myself with a metal trap, a hoe. Where is this weed killing machine? The whole of Thornton Estate is covered in weeds and grass. A lot of residents are really up in arms that they're forced to do it themselves. What are we paying?
Councillor Coles, I do hear what you're saying, but you are a member of this council. We have the machine. If you notice anywhere that needs attention, rather than standing up at this meeting and mentioning it in this way, perhaps you would just let the clerk know and we could send the team round to sort it out.
Did you get all that?
I'm sure that Gerald will be able to take note of it after the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, councillors, do remember you are members of this council and you can talk to the clerk. It is possible between meetings. Our next public speaker is Simon Hours, who's talking about the Trillion Trees project. Very good project.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time once again. May we live in interesting times. And we do live in interesting times, do we not? A few days after I last came before you, there was a rally for freedom down by the monument there. These are for you. I gave you some last time. There were a few things, but I covered that with some Polly Higgins pamphlets. They went out before Christmas, and there's some of the Trillion Trees initiatives there for you. But I'd like you to read for your councillors, which is Mendip and Somerset. I want you to be involved in the Trillion Trees initiative because it's the most important thing that's happening on the planet right now. And if you're not involved in it, then who are we? Where are we? What do we stand for? What do we believe for? Well, this is Glastonbury. In 2014, I came to Glastonbury and I started working on the Tree Life project. Here it is. It was forwarded to my MP and it wasn't responded to until XR came to the stage. This is a copy for you. This is how they can make money from the environment, saving the environment. You can take a copy, forward it to Mendip and Somerset Council, because I'd like you to be involved in the Trillion Trees initiative. What we'd like to do, plant a circle of trees around Glastonbury and then raise money for the community and raise jobs. And we could do this through hemp plantation. We could do this through many, many wonderful things. The first presentation was an introduction. Unfortunately, this is going to be more facts, history, and recap. The last presentation, I don't have the time. Apparently, if you dedicate 10,000 hours to anything, it'll make you an expert. Well, I've dedicated 10,000 hours to this project, and much more than that in money and finance. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So follow me. 2019, we all remember Tell the Truth, don't we? It was all over everywhere. Those pictures. What they should have been showing is this. Do you remember this? This was 1985. Ethiopia, Live Aid. In 100 years, West Africa has lost 90% of its native forests. Now, anybody that believes that hasn't had an impact on the environment or the temperatures are entirely misguided. The droughts have continued through Africa. They continued into the Middle East. Syria have experienced the worst drought ever. It's anywhere on the planet. Somewhere like Antarctica desert. I don't know, rain for 100 years or whatever, but Syria, they've been suffering over there. So while we were all looking at pictures of that was still going on. And they were all saying carbon neutral, carbon neutral. I petitioned my local representative, and I'm glad I did. Don't ever give up on the political process, ladies and gentlemen. Because when we stop talking, stuff like that starts happening. So we keep talking. So basically, I positioned my representatives, we got our carbon neutral grids. And it was kind of all packaged off. It's like, oh, well, it's okay, but we need to deal with this carbon. Yeah, carbon's a problem. They didn't tell you that oxygen is decreasing now at a faster rate than carbon is rising. And this is due, again, to deforestation, has a large impact on that. The science is clear. It's having an impact. The nutrients, they go into the soils rush into the rivers flow into the oceans where they meet these phytoplanktons, little microorganisms. But it comes from foliage from the wildlife, so it's all interconnected. The greatest presentation I ever saw, Dr. Gail Bradbrook, heading for extinction. She was right. Everything she was saying in her presentation, I'm asking you to go back and watch that. She was right. There are big dead zones opening in the ocean. We're losing oxygen at a faster rate and carbon is rising. Carbon dioxide is rising at 30 billion tonnes a year, ladies and gentlemen, and industrial coal and petrol is responsible for 28 billion tonnes of it, most of it. We've got our carbon neutral bids in. What's important and what is going to save the planet is this. While they were having the rally, I approached them and I said, can I please speak about this project? It's so important. I worked so hard on this. I gave everything to this, you know? And so I don't know, Simon. It's not really in with the narrative. I said, it is. You're talking about respiratory illnesses. Well, hypoxia is on the rise across the world, in the seas, and it's due to combustion, and it's due to climate change and global warming. It's due to deforestation as well.
Simon, I'm afraid that the time has run out, but I would welcome you to come back and talk to us some more about this, and I wonder whether some of the councillors may wish to follow up with the Trillion Trees initiative.
Could I just add one more thing? What I would like to do is, because I've spent so much, if I could have where anybody who's interested, I just sit down for half an hour and then you will have the full picture, all the evidence, because I want you to have it. It's really important, and you can be involved. 1 million trees isn't so much, Glastonbury. We can do it. We can plant hemp, we can plant our trees, we can buy it, we can do all of these things. I'm sorry about the downbeat presentation. I've got one more to make, and I will come back next month, and it will be fun, happy, and creative, and about the arts that I really love, and about how I can really help my community.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Cole.
You may or may not be aware, we've got a conservation society in Glastonbury, and over the past 30 odd years, they planted 55,000 trees by volunteers. Not just in Glastonbury, but the surrounding villages, and a lot of orchards.
Everyone around here has a great record. I'm not saying that we don't, because we have. It wasn't our fault we cut down the trees centuries ago for fighting nations we never knew existed back then, you know, whatever. We've got a proud history of planting trees, but I want Glastonbury to back this. I want you just, even if you don't, just say that we believe in this project.
Well, thank you, Simon. We will.
You made a declaration, and you are going to protect the town.
Absolutely.
We'll remind you of that next time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, councillors, I think that's everyone who wishes to speak for public participation. Thank you for coming to speak to us. We're always very keen to listen to the members of the public. We now will start the formal part of the meeting. And I wonder, Angela, would you be happy to light our Glastonbury candle? There's a lighter next to it, and while Angela is lighting the candle, I am aware that this last month has...
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm aware that this last month has seen the anniversary come and go of the passing of our twice former Mayor, Denise Michel, who passed away just over a year ago. So I would like to ask all councillors to hold Denny in their thoughts as we now stand to observe silently. Thank you very much. So, item 1, apologies for absence. Gerald, do we have any apologies?
Your Worship, we have apologies for absence from Councillor Nick Coffle, who's attending a district council meeting this evening. We have apologies received from Christine Pryor, who's away on leave. I haven't heard from Councillor McCool.
Thank you. Councillor.
So I met Lindsay in the High Street this morning, and she said she was going to be unable to attend. I'm surprised she didn't let Gerard know. She said because of COVID, she's very scared to be in a room crowded with the lack of ventilation. And I was wondering if it would be possible in future to hold our meetings in the town hall, where there's much more space and there's much better ventilation, so that people like Lindsay wouldn't be frightened to attend.
Thank you very much, and I think that's something we need to note as a council, and I totally understand Lindsay's concerns. Thank you. So, councillors, we now move on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. I have to declare an interest. We'll be talking later on about the town deal, and I am a member and director of Avalon Community Energy, which is part of the town deal. Any other declarations of interest?
In that case, I'll declare my interest in Backrail and Regeneration Trust.
Thank you.
And I need to declare sense of rights man, we've got a bid in as well.
Thank you very much.
And also
Thank you. And Councillor Lund, you also have an interest in the town deal. Thank you. Thank you very much, councillors. Any other declarations of interest? Thank you. So we now move on to approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the town council meeting held on Tuesday, the 8th of June. Councillors, I would draw your attention to page 7. Councillor Smythe.
Item 25 to receive a police report is an omission that I recommended, and it's agreed by all councillors, that we should request that the Wellhouse Lane would be closed for the period of the solstice. And it was agreed that the town clerk and yourself made representations to the police and county council to achieve the same. It hasn't been minuted.
Thank you, Councillor Smythe. We will put the omission into the minutes. Thank you. Councillor Lund.
Yes. I I believe that at the last meeting we talked about the benches in the high street and those that were going to be replaced outside co-op. There isn't a note in here, but I'm pretty sure we did talk about it. Anyone can confirm that?
It's on page 8.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, under properties and assets, where we talked about reinstating the benches.
So we neatly segue to page 8. Councillor.
And they haven't, well, I'm having struggling reading this now, but as far as I understood, well, they haven't appeared. But I believe there is an explanation for that, so I just thought.
It's the last, Mr. Mayor, it's the last under property and assets. It's the third one up from the bottom.
Okay, so just to correct the record then, it says to reinstate the benches in the high street. So I guess my question is, have we had any update on that?
Thank you very much. Will we be speaking to that later in the meeting, or should we?
We will be speaking to it later.
We'll be speaking to it later in the meeting. Thank you very much, Councillor Lund. Anything else on page 8? Councillor?
There's 7, Your Worship. Just a small point, and there's no number 24. I did notice that. Thank you, I did just notice that now.
Thank you very much. 24 is missing. Councillor Bishop.
Page 7, 23, C, Police Crime Commissioner. That's Mark Shelford, not Mark Stafford.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Very important. Anything on page 8? I would just confirm with the clerk, does this mean that we will renumber all the items from 20?
We will.
Yeah, thank you. So, councillors, bear that in mind when we sign this off. Page 9. Page 10. Councillor Serena Roney-Dougal.
Of corrections under the Climate Emergency Group report. At the beginning, the top paragraph, it talks about the high visibility clothing, and then it says an observation was shared that there appears to be a number of vacant allotments at lower side allotments, some unattended. Now that observation came as a result of the recommendation from the Climate Emergency Group that we consider having a third set of allotments owing to the high numbers of people on the waiting list. And that statement is missing. And so the observation makes no sense without the fact that the Climate Emergency Group recommended or was proposing that we start a discussion on the recommendation to have a third set of allotments. And I think that statement should come in place to make sense of that paragraph.
Thank you very much. Ask that, well, just a second, Councillor Coles. Councillor Barnett, then Councillor Keary, I believe, and then Councillor Coles. Thank you.
Under item 35D, youth, it's just a typo. And under D, it's organised for next week, not next. I'd love to experience next, but...
Next is the new next.
I'm really sorry, I haven't actually finished.
Sorry, I do apologise, Councillor.
But, well, because then it has point 1, community fridge, and actually nothing was discussed about the community fridge at this point in time. It had been discussed in property and assets, and it's mentioned in the property and assets on page 8. And so really it should be completely deleted at this point because it was not part of the Climate Emergency Group report at all. And it wasn't actually part of that town council report. It had been discussed in property and assets.
Thank you.
And it's bulleted point there. So please with that whole paragraph be deleted.
Thank you very much. I look to the clerk to see that we correct that error in the minute.
I'll take guidance, Your Worship, but I wouldn't have taken a note of the minute if it hadn't been discussed. At some point during the evening, it was raised, possibly under the item of the property and assets report.
That is correct. It was raised under property and assets, and Gerard said it had been mentioned at property and assets, and that Gina had immediately taken steps to correct the problems. And so that was where it was raised. As I said,
It was bulleted in property assets. It was not part of the climate emergency report.
So I think the solution is to move this paragraph to the appropriate part of the minutes. Is that correct? Would that be all right, Gerard? Thank you very much. Have you finished, Councillor?
I've now completed.
Thank you. So I think the next councillor was Councillor Barnett. Thank you.
I spoke.
Sorry, I do apologise. The next councillor is Councillor John Keary.
Thank you, Worship. I have a problem with item 36, and I'd like to initially find out what is the process of these minutes being put together. I assume that after the minute is done, that the Mayor agrees that this is a record of the meeting and that therefore you are happy for this to come forward as a record of the meeting.
I'm happy for this to come forward as a draft until approved record of the meeting, and this is the point of going through the minutes.
Yes. It just surprises me that you have recorded the vote by each councillor. In my 40 odd years on this council, whenever there has been a vote, whether it be recorded or not, there has never been in the minutes a record of how councillors have voted. Councillor Tucker may also be able to say that we have never before, on all of the votes over the years that have been taken, where a vote, named vote has been called, it never has been recorded in the minutes of the meeting how each councillor voted. So I'm surprised that it's come forward this, because you yourself have been on the council for quite some years, and you are probably aware that when there have been recorded votes before, they have never been noted in the minutes. So I would like to understand why, on this occasion, this particular vote has been recorded by how each councillor voted.
Well, thank you very much for raising it. I'm going to defer the answer to the clerk, and perhaps he can advise us why the normal records, as councillors remember them, are different to these minutes.
I think the statement or question, Your Worship, is the named vote being in the minutes. I think that's what the question is. The named votes were included in a vote taken also by name, many names, in the May meeting, which was held in the church, if you recall, and that was minuted by name, and nothing was raised after that occasion. When you take a proposal to record the naming of each councillor, how they voted, it is then clearly I note that, and it was on my decision that I took it that it was just a vote unless I had put it into the minute. So if you feel I'm going wrong, I'll happily make a correction and amendment. But to me, a named or recorded vote is the recording of the note in the minute. But I'll happily take guidance.
Thank you very much. I think that this is something that we should consult with SOLC about and check our standing orders, whether or not this is in line with the standing orders of the council and is appropriate for a council to have in its minutes. I'm sorry, councillor, that it's a change to what we've always done, but doing something always doesn't necessarily mean doing it right. So we must make sure that we do it in line with SOLC and what is normal for a town council or parish, a successor parish like ourselves, to do. I would imagine, if I was a member of the public and a recorded vote had been requested, to be able to read in the minute which councillor voted what way. But I may be extraordinary in that.
If that is the case, Your Worship, then I think the events need to be minuted correctly. If you recollect, this vote was about the electric van, and it was not about whether we should have one or not. It was about a particular van being held by Chalks at £14,000. The town clerk will know that I've raised the issue of electric vans with him a year or more ago when I found out that Minehead Council were using electric vans, and I asked him to investigate that, and he followed that up. But if you remember, the vote was about which particular van, because councillors spoke about a rental of a van, about dual power vans, what would be more suitable for the council, and those options were not fully investigated, but it then came to a vote about a particular van, £14,000, which is minuted. I would like to record that I was in favour of an electric van, but not the one from Chalks, because I didn't believe it was the best value for the council. So if this is going to stand, then we need to correct the minute to properly record what the councillors were voting about, and it was about a particular van, not about the principle of having electric vans. And you will remember a number of councillors spoke in that vein, myself and others. So I would like corrected the fact that this was specifically about chalk van.
Thank you, Councillor. I will ask the clerk to amend the record of the minutes. So, thank you,
If
Councillor.
you look at the minutes, it actually says in the final paragraph, just before the recorded votes, that Councillor Ronnie Dougal proposed, seconded by Councillor Smythe, that the replacement Nissan van currently head by FJ Chalk at Wincanton should be purchased for 14,000 plus VAT. That's what we voted on.
Right.
It was absolutely specific.
Right.
And so that point is there, that that's what the vote was about.
That is correct. But the vote actually doesn't indicate which way the councillors were in favour of electric vans or not. It just votes about a specific...
That specific...
But that's the vote that was recorded, Councillor.
Yes, exactly. But it doesn't, then the minutes need to be changed to say that the other councillors were in favour of having an electric van, but did not believe that the van at Chalks was the best value for Glastonbury ratepayers, and that therefore puts a completely different slant on the vote.
I understand where you're coming from, and of course we're all delighted to be able to support the move from fossil fuels to electric vehicles.
Indeed.
Councillor Henderson, you wish to speak?
I was just going to say exactly the same, John Kerry there. I think it needs to be pointed out that we are in favour of an electric van, but as you said yourself, the general public need to know which way people voted, but I think they need to know the nature of that, where that vote was taken. I mean, just looking at that, it seems that the 4 people that voted against are against electric vans. It doesn't say that we were in favour, but not this particular van. I think that needs to be pointed out.
I would suggest that we amend the minutes so that it reflects that, so that it gives a true indication of the support of this council for electric vehicles per se. Councillor, someone else wished to speak. I saw a hand go up.
It's me.
So, Councillor Coles and then Councillor Barnett.
Going back to property assets, page 8, may I ask the town clerk on quotes for the blinds and curtains, all curtains in the main hall, and bullet 3, have we had a quote for sanding and repairing the main floor in the main hall?
Are we speaking to this later?
That's an agenda item for the next property assets meeting.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Barnett.
I was just, Your Worship, going to point out that whilst I feel that it's correct that it should be clarified that all the councillors were actually in consent to a van, above the vote it says very clearly in darker letters, proposal to purchase a 4-year-old Nissan van from F.J. Clark. Chalk, sorry, I've got the wrong glasses on, and cost of, etc. So that bit is clear. So all that's actually needing to be added was that all the councillors agreed that there was consensus that there should be an electric vehicle.
Thank you. I think that is, we're all in agreement with that, and that the clerk will amend the minute appropriately to reflect that. Thank you very much, and thank you for raising the issue. Councillors, anything more on page 10, or can we move to page 11? Councillor Barnett.
Sorry, I think it's, I'm not sure if her name is spelt right. Under item 37, I thought it was Tina McEwen.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I used to be a proofreader.
Thank you.
And McEwen is actually spelled E-U-E-N.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the A and the E have been transposed.
So, councillors, with all of those amendments, are you happy for me to sign this off as a true record of the meeting? Thank you.
Well, I better prepare those.
I understand that, and I will find them off later. So we now move in the agenda to the summary of actions from previous meetings. Councillors, this was tabled. You should have a copy.
It wasn't, Your Worship.
Oh,
you have it.
Oh, I had it. Sorry, I do apologise. It was tabled for me.
Okay, so the items from the previous meeting I was asked to write to the Mendip officers and their respective managers and elected members involved with the town deal fund to thank them for their input. If you'll recall, the announcement of the success of the town deal fund came at the time of the last meeting. I have written to the Police and Crime Commissioner inviting him to come to Glastonbury. I did invited him on a specific date here in July, but his diary does not allow him to come until Friday the 10th of September, and that will be in the morning, Your Worship. So if you could please make a note of that date. The electric van has now been purchased, has been signed in, and the protective cladding inside the vehicle is now installed, and the vehicle is now operational. The problems reported through the Public Assets Committee with the community fridge seem now to have been resolved, following the discussions between the clerk and the organisers of the fridge. So we seem to be on a better footing now than at the last meeting. Correspondence has been sent to the MP, Environment Minister, and Somerset County Council regarding the extraction of peat, which you recall was a request that I did last time. I've had acknowledgement of that from the MP. The website has a message contained which informs that Glastonbury Town Council does not support unauthorised events, parades and demonstrations, as was asked of me by you, and that has now been put on the website, and that is it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smythe.
I hope he's followed the mayor in the mission by the town clerk, and that he, I understand, contacted the police and county council with regard to closure of Wellhouse Lane for Solstice period. And I understand that they said that they haven't got the resources, so that would be actions from the last meeting too.
Thank you very much. I think that probably should be added to the minute of the actions taken by the clerk. Joe, would you wish to speak to that?
That's fine, Your Worship.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Smythe. Councillors, I'm minded that we move on to the next item, which is to receive the police report. And we have a copy of the Mendip West newsletter for our information. Councillors, are we happy to note this? Councillor Brown.
Yes, I'm happy to know that you've received that, but can I mention that I'm deeply unhappy that this is not specific to Glastonbury. And we need input from the rapid response teams as well as to what is happening in Glastonbury. I'm very well aware of rushing police cars coming through the town, and we're not aware of what is happening.
Your Worship, may I come back?
Thank you.
Thank you. The request goes out each month prior, about 10 days prior to the meeting, to remind the beat managers of the need for a report, and often it's within the last few days. I try to get it so that I can circulate it with the agenda. That's the intent. That didn't happen on this occasion. I have emailed again the second time the 3 beat managers and asked for a report, and I spoke to a beat manager yesterday and reminded that I need a report. I'm afraid one hasn't been forthcoming. So apart from requesting numerous times, there's little I can do about it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Serena Roney-Dougal.
Yes, so again, this was from a meeting with Lindsay in the High Street this morning, and she was remarking how already there was somebody at that time, 10 o'clock in the morning, sitting in the High Street drinking beer, and the solution to that problem is for us to have police or other security people regularly checking that people are not flouting the no alcohol drinking regulations of the High Street. And we were wondering if that could be sent through to the police to ask them, could they please make sure there are people around checking up that people are not drinking alcohol on the High Street.
Thank you very much. Councillor Much, Councillor Smythe.
Can I just ask for clarification on the law here? Because I got confused about whether or not the no drinking in the High Street law can be enforced by the police or not. I've forgotten what the second can be enforced.
Yes, there is a, well, I'll hand over to my learned friend, Councillor Lysham.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the point that the Public Space Protection Order, the PSPO, requires a drinker to hand over their drink to the designated officer when required. It doesn't actually prevent people drinking in the high street, or you wouldn't be able to have tables and chairs outside the Crown and the George and Pilgrim and any other hotel or pub. So it's about having to hand it over, and the refusal to hand it over is then the crime. But it needs the designated officer to be present. So you're correct in that. Thank you.
Thank you. I noted, Councillor Smythe.
I'd just like to reiterate what Stuart said. Thank you for clarifying that. In that this has recently become more of a problem because it's on a very regular basis and it sets a precedent for the rest of the day, and it's encouraging other street drinkers to join. It's quite often as early as 8 or 8:30 in the morning this occurring, so I think it's important that it's addressed.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
When we were talking about reinstating the benches, I did start to suggest that I would have a poll of the traders in the town to see what they thought about it. And generally speaking, most people are in favour of having the benches back, but almost to a man or to a woman, they said that we must have signage and enforcement along with that. Councillor Much suggested a sign that we have up there suggesting about non-drinking, which we've already got, and also about being mindful of other people's needs for the benches. And I think everybody was in favour of those, but behind all of it is enforcement by the police, because if they stop people drinking there, they will stop doing it. But the fact is, they're allowed to do it with impunity, and they just carry on doing it. And one other thing I would suggest is that when we were having the monthly meetings with the police, maybe there was quite an onus on the suppliers of the alcohol not to supply people that were going to be drinking in the street. And they, as the co-op, Music 10, etc., pretty much took that on board. And I think that maybe been a bit relaxed, because I have seen people coming out of both places with drink, and I think we need to get that, because they have got a responsibility, having that licence, not to serve people who are, you know, in a bad way or whatever. So I think they need to be sort of reminded that is their responsibility.
Thank you. I think that's very true. Councillor Lunt.
Okay. Well, we're all aware that we're coming up to that point in the year, August, recognised as the height of the tourist season, when the children are on holiday, families are moving, they're coming here, coming to visit. Already the town is pretty full today, I saw, and if the weather keeps up and the restrictions are lifted, there'll be more people coming and taking advantage, obviously, hopefully in a good way, of what we're offering. But with 2 sets of headlines in the newspaper since our last meeting, looking and talking about the difficulties that the town was having, both at the Tor, Stonedown, and on the Travellers Road and other places. I know that local news may not get out, but they tend to use news headlines on the front page to spread on social media. So though we think it's just local, it actually is going all around the country. And you know, we don't have at the moment our liaison meeting with the police, because Sergeant Tom Miller is away, and we're waiting for him to come back. But there ought to perhaps be a replacement. And I'm aware that the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor have a more strategic meeting, but we don't have an immediate feedback to the rest of our council as to what was about. So we've got a lack of communication somewhere in the systems. We've got residents, and I had one today, that said to me, so the police have told us that they want to come and talk to us, they're going to have a meeting. What is that about? And I said, I don't know what that's about. And I still don't know what that's about. But there's some suggestion the police have contacted the traders and said that they would like to have a meeting with them, but we don't know what that's about. So we look a bit foolish. You know, the trader says to me, Councillor Lund, you're on the council, you don't know what's going on. I just make these points because we do need to have that liaison, and we do need to have effective measures to make sure that the town throughout August is well managed, because it's the people that come. If they come and they have a bad experience, we know what happens. So just another plea. I hope it's being minuted, because often when I talk about these things, I don't see very much in there. It's difficult to write minutes of everything that people say. But we do need to do something more proactive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What I can say, which I'm sure you and Councillor Henderson will be pleased about, is that Tom Miller is returning, and the Deputy Mayor and I specifically asked the beat manager to reinstate the meetings that you both have with him. And so hopefully that will be reinstated soon, and we will be able to make sure that communications are improved in that way. Councillors, we now, to be mindful of time, I wonder if we could receive and consider the receive the reports of the county councillors.
Yeah, you've missed the resolution.
Oh, sorry, do you know, in my mind, I thought we'd already covered this. To receive and consider the resolution of the meeting of the planning committee held on the 15th of June. I'll hand over to the Deputy Chair of Planning. Is that you, Councillor Smythe?
Thank you, Worship. I would just like to draw an E on this, which, with regards to the proposed felling of a 300-year-old ash, which is also a TPO. Sorry. This is also a TPO tree. The planning committee decided to refer this to the tree officer. I've since heard that the tree officer would seek guidance, and myself, I'm quite appalled by this application, in that it's not causing any erosion to the side of the road. It seems to be that it's an insurance company who wish it to be felled. So I appeal to councillors as individuals to take a look at this. It's number 2 Ashwell Lane. And if they're in agreement with me to write individually objection to this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to item I, there was an application put in for storage on a piece of land which this council has been well aware for a long time have been kind of illegally occupied and cleared, etc., etc. And with that in mind, I'm not on the planning committee anymore, but I did sit in on the meeting. With that in mind, and at the time quite rightly so, the committee refused the application. Now I've since learned that that land has been bought by somebody else who is in the process of getting rid of the people that were on there, and is hoping to, I think he's bought a land around there and is trying to bring this land back to some sort of decent state. So I think, long story short, I think this application needs to be investigated a bit more. I've spoken to another district council about it from Mere, who is more up to date than I am, and I would be mindful at the moment to take this to the board. I don't know what the rest of the committee think about that, but I think that may be an appropriate way forward.
Thank you. I would say that this is your ward, isn't it? Yeah. Well, Councillor, if you are minded to have a different recommendation to the town council, it will go to the board anyway, and I would suggest that that is the way forward. If you feel that's a place, I always expect the utmost politeness from our councillors. Councillor Smythe.
Just as Deputy Chair of the Planning Commission, Planning Committee, I'd just like to make it clear that that was known by the committee at the time of our decision. All right. If you were there.
Well, if I can come back, I think what happened after the meeting, Councillor Pryor, the chair, actually went and met this gentleman to clarify, because I don't think it was known at the time. I think the whole point was that we were not keen to grant a planning permission to somebody that had illegally taken on a bit of land. which, as it transpired, was not the case. It was a new landowner.
Councillors, I know that everyone wishes to speak to this, but the resolution, the way to resolve this is very simple. The district ward councillor puts in a different recommendation to the town council. It will go to the planning authority to be considered by the board. That way, Mendip, who have the power to approve or not, can listen to you as the ward councillor and understand the situation. I feel that there's really little point in going back over this now, and would remind councillors that we all agreed to stand by our terms of our standing orders, which I hope we've read and understood. Councillor Barnett.
I just wanted to alert Councillor Henderson to the fact that it wasn't Councillor Pryor who met Mr. Blinham, who was with his wife and his parents-in-law, the purchasers. I was invited to go and meet him. He said he had bought a new piece of land, and the indication was that it was actually in my ward and further into town. And it was only when I actually met him that I discovered that it was this piece of land. It also seemed that the family, I met all the family members concerned, and it seemed that they were confused over the process, as they hadn't understood that the proposal was being sent by Mendip to our town council for consideration. So I actually explained the process to him. I actually did suggest to them that they should speak directly to you. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, councillors. Anything else on the meeting of the planning committee resolutions?
Just a quick point of information, because I think all councillors would have believe the same as I have. On item number 8, I think we felt that the rural movement of car sales into the site where Lidl is, basically, that was going to be a move from Wells Road to that site. Talking to some people with more information, it appears that it's going to be a new development for Ruddles, and they intend staying on the Wells Road. So that affects our thoughts on housing going into the Somerset County Council yard and Ruddles on Wells Road, just for information.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillors, I now suggest we move on to receive the County Councillor reports. County Councillors.
Thank you, Your Worship, and apologies for no written report. If I wrote a report on one day of the week, it would be superseded the next. I just wanted to talk about the sort of 3 threads of what's happening in Glastonbury, looking ahead. So we've got the thread of the town fund, and you'll hear from Councillor Tucker later. And then alongside that, and all of these are in parallel tracks at the moment, we've got the work of the multi-agency group. And it's really important, Your Worship, that people understand that that group is not just working on enforcement. It is working on trying to establish land for traveller sites in the town and around the town. It is trying to find longer term solutions for issues on the highway in and around the town. And then we've got the third thread, which is the move, possibly, to unitary authority. So what we've got at the minute is 3 critically important pieces of work for this town that are running on parallel tracks, and where some people are sitting across 1, 2, or even 3 tracks. And I feel very strongly that what we need to be doing, perhaps as soon as we hear next week, we're expecting the future on unitary or otherwise, that when we start being able to put that timeline together, that we then put alongside that the timeline for the multi-agency group work, where we should be hearing some of the longer term solutions coming forward soon, and the work of the town fund, and then look for those critical convergence points when the 3 are going to come together, because they will, at some points, they will come together. And I think we all need to have that full understanding where those points are what will happen at those times and how we can all contribute to them coming together in the most positive way. So that work, at the minute, it's just in my head, but I see it as a kind of flow chart, not going down a page or up a page, but actually stretching ahead of us. And I doubt there's anybody in this town who's ever really had to look at this amount of work together at the same time. I'd be very surprised. So I'm standing here dedicating my efforts to looking at those threads and how we can tie them together. And that, of course, is across county and Mendip and this town council and all the other partners. Should the Secretary of State decide on one Somerset, there is already a very clear timeline for that, which went to County Council scrutiny and Cabinet yesterday. So that is very clearly laid down already. If it happened to go to Stronger Somerset or some kind of hybrid between them, then clearly there's a lot more work to do. But the basic timeline may not change of election in 22, vesting day in April, and then onwards. There's just so much work ahead that it's best not to think about it sometimes. The other thing, on a slightly more manageable note, Councillor Napper and I have still had no notification of when the 20-mile-an-hour zone will be implemented in the town centre. And having got to the map and having got to the advertising of the TRO, that is really disappointing. So we'll chase that up again and see where on earth we are with that, because that was something that we hoped and expected would be completed a long time ago. And it will make a point, everything makes a point, that we're all working for the betterment of the town and her people. And we'll continue to do that. Thank you, Your Worship. Any questions, of course? Anything Councillor Napper wishes to add, of course?
Thank you. Would you like to take questions together or separately now?
Don't mind, depends what the questions are, Your Worship.
Well, knowing that you...
difficult, I'll pass them on to
Thank you. So, Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Your Worship. The potholes have been done in Wales Road. Thank you very much. It's not been done very perfectly, but it's better than what it was. In actual fact, by Lake Martin Road, it needs resurfacing. But we've still got those potholes in Maglin Street. So if you could have a go at county highways again, that'd be brilliant. A lot of people complaining about outside here.
Thank you very much. Councillor Houghton.
Yes, Councillor Rice, thank you very much. Would you be able to give us a clarification on the amount of money set aside for the provision of the site in Mendip as yet for travellers?
I can tell you there is no particular budget. I think next week, and the Secretary of State announcement will be extremely important, because if we go to one council for the whole of the geographical area of Somerset, that will change the need and expectation for transit sites for travellers through Somerset. If we go to 2 unitary councils, then each of those unitary councils would have to provide their own transit sites at least. And you probably know there is not a single transit site in Somerset at present. So South Somerset have got some permanent sites which are full, never get any spaces, no pictures come up. There is a temporary site in Sedgemoor, which I can't even find out where it is. Mendip did have a temporary site during the COVID times on land that belongs to the county council near Frome. So there are various pieces of work. I had an approach from one private landowner, which unfortunately has not got any further at this stage. And the main question was, what is the budget for purchasing land? Well, there isn't a budget as such for purchasing land, but there is an enabling project within the town fund, which has a budget, but that also includes the phosphate issues. So that is about traveller site and phosphate. We know that the county owns some land in the town. We know that Mendip owns the moorland site and some other bits of land in the town. We know that the town council owns some. My perfect vision would be that each of the three councils put forward a piece of land, not a huge piece, because everyone advises me that large sites are not the answer, that you're better with more smaller sites, and that the town council is one of those landowners. And then ideally, but this is, blue skies and sun shining thinking, that there could be a possibility that councils between them, whether it becomes a unitary or whether it's county and Mendip together, actually consider it essential to purchase another small piece of land. You all know the problems. You know the problems of the flood zone, the contaminated land, the odour zone. All of those things are all still in the mix. When I replied to the private landowner, what Mendip has to take every piece of land through in terms of checking everything and then having the land valued. So it has to pass through all these gates, flood zone, odour zone, all the rest of it. Highways access, because highways access has to ensure wide enough gate, enough turning to get into a field, and then what requirements the police and others have for a temporary site, whether it has to be massive pitches with day room, with proper loos and showers, or whether it could be, as a temporary site, hard standing, capped off, with standpipe water, and possibly even portaloos. So the police have a part in deciding that too, as to what is acceptable for a temporary site. I think that there's also a requirement for what is rather unpleasantly called a decant site. So if any work is to be done to the moorland site, there would need to be a decant site, because the people who are there would have to move for the work to be done to cap it off. You'll all know about that technical study that was done in 2014-15 that explained how that contaminated land could be capped off to be used. That has to be done. All of the services have to be run in properly, not bowsers of water, but mains water. There's a huge amount to do. And my hopes for the future are on these threads of the town fund and the move to unitary, and to stop the councils fighting with county saying, we'll evict on our land, we'll evict on the highways, you Mendip provide the traveller sites, and when Mendip goes to county and say, what about this land, county talk about it at market value. It's a nonsense. It's a nonsense, and my only way through that, in my mind, is the move to unitary. And then for people to stop fighting over who has the responsibility for highways, who has the responsibility for gypsy and traveller sites, who has the responsibility for community protection notices and warnings, and it all becomes one council, and all they can do is fight with themselves.
Very much. Did you say there's an announcement?
Councillor, I may remind you to stand when you're speaking.
You say there's an announcement next week.
It is expected before the summer recess, which starts on the 22nd of July. So it is possible it'll come on the 20th or 21st. I'm told it could be quite a low-key announcement in the House of Commons. But it won't be low-key in Somerset, will it?
Thank you. Councillor Bishop, Councillor Keary.
Sure. We talked about the Brodie's Mount, where the notice board is up, the original entrance in. That has been redirected.
Yeah.
Can we clarify is there access to the public? So I've visited that site many, many times before. There is a stile put in there, which I assume would have been put in by rights of way people, okay? The explanation sign explaining the history of that site has been taken down and placed on the floor, and there's been a sign put to redirect people around in past into a field on the track. So,
I can explain it to you.
oh, no, that was fantastic.
Yeah. There is no right of way.
Okay, thank you.
So the only I've been through this with Councillor Ronnie Dougal, we've been through it 100 times, haven't we? There is no right of way for the public. The only right of way in that area is along the riverbank, which the Glastonbury Way follows. There is now a permissive way granted by the Friends of Bride's Mound from the riverbank to Bride's Mound. The access from what I call Jamie Vincent's yard and then Darch's yard is allowed for the county council, the landowners and their managers, which is the South West Heritage Trust, to access that land for grass cutting or tree planting or work, like archaeological work. So that is the only access is for the landowner. It has been used, hasn't it? And a new gate was put in. And is there a stile?
So the Friends of Bride's Mound put access along what used to be the farm track when it was a farm down there, and that track went up to the chapel field, and that's where the track that you're talking about. Yeah. And the Friends of Bride's Mound have given permission for people to use that trackway in order to access the chapel field. And so whilst the Jamie Darch was doing his building of industrial sites, he closed off the permissive route that the county had, which had been used by people for access. And so the Friends have been directing people round by their land so that they could access Bride's Mound through their land. And now we've got the Glastonbury Way, and we've given the permissive route from the river to Bride's Mound. So the Friends have given two possible routes to the chapel site. That's the Glastonbury Way.
Councillor, please stand if you're speaking.
So the signs that are currently down on the floor, where you can't access through to read them, will they be brought out and put into the new entrance?
I'm not sure what signs you're talking about, I'm afraid. I will be going down on Friday to meet with Simon Clark from Somerset Wildlife Trust. That's part of the town fund deal, what we're working on. And maybe then I'll look to see what signs you're talking about that are on the floor, because I don't know what those signs are.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Keary and then Councillor Smythe.
Just a point of information, if the events are one Somerset going through does that affect in any way the negotiations we are having with them and transfer? Do you think it will freeze any transfers of assets once the announcement is made, which might affect transfers that are taking place at the moment?
Your Worship, I can assure you that every town in Mendip is asking the same question. If during this process, if the Secretary of State does say go unitary, anything that goes through a public meeting and decisions are made and monies are allocated goes through to the new council. It gets baked in, as people say. If there is a communication, but it is informal, it is not voted on in a public meeting, and the finance decision is not taken and agreed by the 151 officer, then it's returned to go, do not collect 100. So it is really important at this stage that anything that needs to be in place for the 1st of April 2023 is moved forward. So there's a great deal of work going on at Mendip. And things can take different routes. They can go through the asset management group, which includes a certain councillor license, I believe. And it can go then from there to Cabinet, it can go from there to the Phoenix Board. So there are different routes, but they need to be really clear where those routes are, and they need to be, in effect, set in stone. and the finance is agreed by the 151 officer. So you can imagine how much is coming forward at Mendon. And I presume the same at the other district councils.
Thank you. I shall strike any thought of Jack Horner from my head with the term baked in. Councillor Lund. Oh, sorry, was it Councillor Smythe? No, Councillor Lund.
Yes, talking now about revenue road, you wouldn't want to miss that out, would you? Without fact, that it's been successfully emptied, all bar one or two that come back and disappear again and come back. I'm sure the residents will want to ask you, what are the plans for making sure that in certainly the next month, waiting for a season, that we're not going to see another influx, so there's no physical barriers or sizes there.
The only thing I can report is that residents on the Redlands estate have been extremely active in lobbying the MP and the county council and the leader of the county council about temporary measures. And so one of the things that I'm hoping for is under the active travel term of walking and cycling, that it may be possible to put in a temporary or an emergency traffic regulation order to take some section of that road and make it a cycle route. And my personal view is, but I don't have any influence here really, all I can do is keep chasing them, is that it would need some kind of barrier to make that safe. My personal view is that it would be great for the children of Glastonbury to be able to have some straight, safe space for cycling. Some of the residents have rightly pointed out that there's some subsidence and damage on the road, the sort of far end by the sewage pumping station. So that would have to be repaired. I would really love to see it join up to Cinnamon Lane, where you can walk through, and then one day, you might be able to come from the A39 street, get a greenway across. This is Councillor Napper's dream, isn't it? A greenway across, following the Brew, join up to Bretonneau Road, join up to Cinnamon Lane, join up to Kennard Moors Road, and you could then cycle on quiet lanes to East Kennard. And round. I mean, there is the most amazing opportunity, and actually with what the government and councils are doing on active travel, if it's going to happen, this is the time. So it might be something that this council wants to look at, Your Worship, about supporting active travel in town and promoting some routes, and perhaps working with Street Parish Council on that too.
Thank you very much. Councillor, I'm conscious that we've just mentioned Councillor Napper, who hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet, but I'm so heartened to hear of his dream of a green way. So perhaps, Councillor Napper, you would like to speak to us now, if that's all right.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think most of the things have been covered this evening. There is a Freedom Day coming on the 19th, as we all know. I think we all know, and it's up to people's own responsibility to be very cautious about. I can report on the COVID situation, an update on that. The numbers are going up. The 7-day rate has increased because of social coming together. Maybe the football had some kind of reaction on that. And the whole numbers are expected to go up. And basically it's the younger age range